19 years. That is how long I had poured my life into this medical research lab. I walked through those glass doors fresh out of graduate school, eager to contribute to medical advancement, and I stayed through grant cycles, staff turnover, equipment overhauls, and countless high-pressure clinical trials. I learned every nuance of our testing workflows, helped build our safety procedures from the ground up, and troubleshooted crises long after everyone else had gone home. I was not the loudest voice in meetings. I did not chase promotions or media attention, but I was the steady foundation the entire lab leaned on every single day. Then the new COO arrived. He was young, polished, and bursting with overconfidence, brought in from outside the medical science field specifically to slash spending and boost quarterly profits. From his very first staff address, it was clear human expertise meant almost nothing to him. Spreadsheets and cost targets were his only priority. Safety protocols that had protected our lab and our test subjects for years were quickly labeled bloated, unnecessary red tape. He pushed researchers to rush trial timelines, ignored risk alerts, and brushed off feedback from senior scientists. Anyone who pushed back against his cost-cutting plans got sidelined or dismissed. I watched with growing alarm as he chipped away at safeguards that I had helped create. I submitted formal written warnings. I pointed out where skipping steps could create dangerous liability for the whole organization. My reports landed in his inbox and vanished. He had no interest in listening to a mid-level lab staffer, no matter how much institutional knowledge I carried. To him, I was simply a high-salary line on his expense sheet. The blow landed on an unremarkable Tuesday morning. No prior disciplinary meeting, no performance review, no heads up. His assistant summoned me straight to his corner office. Sunlight glinted off his expensive desk, and he barely glanced up from his tablet as I sat down. "We are streamlining operations," he told me flatly. "Your position is being eliminated." Effective immediately, I sat there stunned. 19 years of late nights, emergency weekend call-ins, and institutional memory erased in one cold sentence. All my loyalty, all the times I had bailed the lab out of disaster, none of it counted. He was cutting my salary to make his quarterly budget look better. That was the whole reason. He expected me to beg. He probably anticipated tears, arguments, pleas for another chance. But I felt a strange, quiet calm wash over me. I had known for months this day might come. Long ago, early in my tenure, I had developed the core proprietary testing technology that powered most of our lab's revenue-generating trials. Back then, I had filed the patent under my maiden name. The company never negotiated full ownership rights. They only had a verbal, informal working license for as long as I remained employed there. No one in upper management had ever bothered to read the fine print. That arrogant COO had just fired the person who held the keys to their most valuable intellectual property. He had stepped blindly into a multimillion-dollar trap of his own making, and he did not even know it yet. I kept my composure during the termination meeting. I collected my personal belongings from my lab station, handed over my company badge, and walked out the front doors without a single dramatic outburst. Colleagues shot me sad, confused looks as I passed through the hallway. None of them understood what was about to unfold. As I got into my car in the parking lot, I thought about everything that had happened. I did not crave petty revenge, but I knew reality would soon catch up with his reckless corporate restructuring. The lab could keep running for a short while on existing cached data, but without me, there was nobody who could fully maintain, update, or repair the patented core system. The informal access they enjoyed died the moment my employment ended. He thought he had cut dead weight from his budget. In truth, he had just ripped out the critical backbone of their entire operation, and it would not take long for the whole house of cards to start shaking. The first 12 hours after I left the lab were deceptively quiet. The COO celebrated my termination like a corporate victory. He bragged to his executive team about ruthless cost-cutting, boasted about trimming redundant labor, and insisted the lab would run leaner, faster, and more profitably without my long-standing role weighing down the budget. He had zero comprehension of what I'd built. To his business-only mindset, I was just an employee with a salary. He failed to grasp that I was the system architect, the sole troubleshooter, and the original creator of the entire lab's operational framework. The cached data and automated processes they relied on were never designed to run indefinitely without my oversight, updates, and manual calibration. The first warning signs surfaced late that night. Night shift researchers logged into the core testing platform to initiate routine clinical trials, only to face repeated system errors. Trial data failed to sync, automated safety audits froze mid-process, and critical result-generating algorithms sputtered with unknown glitches. No one on staff knew how to diagnose the problem. All existing troubleshooting guides were written by me, tailored to my proprietary code, and none of the junior scientists had ever been granted full access to the core system's back-end structure. Panic quietly spread through the night team, but no one dared wake the new COO. Everyone knew he hated being disturbed after hours, and he'd already made it clear he dismissed all minor technical hiccups as trivial nuisances. By early morning, the minor glitches exploded into a full-scale operational collapse. The entire proprietary testing system crashed completely. Ongoing clinical trials froze mid-execution. Valuable patient data stopped logging in real time. Automated safety compliance checks shut down entirely, and every revenue-generating research project ground to an immediate halt. The lab's core workflow, which had run flawlessly for nearly 2 decades under my maintenance, was dead in the water. The lab erupted into chaos. Senior scientists rushed to salvage stalled trials. Technicians frantically rebooted servers and reran protocols, and department heads scrambled to find any fix for the catastrophic failure. But every attempt to restore the system failed. The core code was encrypted with my personal patent credentials, layers of custom security and unique algorithm logic that no corporate IT team had ever been trained to bypass or repair. The COO arrived at work that morning in a cheerful mood, still proud of his budget cut victory. His confidence shattered the second he stepped into the disorganized, panicked lab. Phones were ringing nonstop, researchers were scrambling aimlessly, and executive assistants were rushing toward him with panicked expressions. "What is going on here?" he demanded, furious at the unprofessional chaos disrupting his perfectly planned workday. His lead research director stepped forward, voice tight with stress. "The core testing system is fully offline, sir. All active trials are suspended, no new data can be processed, and we can't restore functionality. We've tried every standard fix, but nothing works. The system is locked out entirely." The COO's face twisted with disbelief and irritation. He refused to accept that a simple system error could halt his entire operation. "Hire an external tech team. Pay whatever it costs to fix this immediately. We have quarterly targets to hit." His arrogance blinded him to the true severity of the crisis. He assumed this was a standard IT issue, a quick fix that outside contractors could resolve in hours. Multiple elite external tech teams were brought in throughout the day, each handed full corporate access and tasked with restoring the crashed system. Every single team spent hours digging through server logs, analyzing code structures, and running diagnostic scans, only to deliver the same devastating verdict. They could not fix it. They could not even fully understand it. The entire core system was custom-built, uniquely coded, and legally patented by an individual, not the corporation. Every critical function was tied to personal intellectual property, layered with private security protocols that no third party could override. The lab only had temporary employee-linked usage rights, rights that terminated the second I was fired. The moment the external legal team reviewed the patent records and official documentation, the full, terrifying truth crashed over the entire executive board. The company did not own the technology that powered their entire business. I did, under my maiden name, fully legal, fully protected, fully irrevocable. The COO did not just fire a senior employee. He fired the sole owner of their multimillion-dollar core infrastructure. He eliminated the only person on the planet who could repair, maintain, or restart their entire operational system. By mid-afternoon, the lab was forced to issue an emergency shutdown of all clinical trials. Client partners began sending urgent warning emails, threatening contract breaches, and massive financial penalties for failed deliverables. Investors were alerted of the catastrophic system failure, and company stock values began plummeting in real time. What started as a greedy budget cut had snowballed into a corporate disaster costing the company millions by the hour. Trapped, desperate, and completely out of options, the arrogant COO who'd discarded my 19 years of loyalty like trash had no choice left. He had to contact me, beg me, plead for the mercy of the woman he'd fired without a second thought. By late afternoon, the lab's crisis was no longer an internal technical failure. It was a public corporate emergency. Client contracts hung in the balance. Regulatory audits loomed overhead, and every passing minute drained thousands from the company's bottom line. The COO's reckless cost-cutting victory had turned into a nightmare he could not outrun, outsource, or fix. His pride crumbled completely. The arrogant, profit-obsessed executive who'd dismissed my 19 years of expertise as disposable overhead had nowhere left to turn. Every legal and technical avenue was exhausted. Every expert consultation yielded the same brutal truth. Only I could restore the system. He resisted reaching out for as long as he could, clinging to the last shreds of his ego. He hated the thought of begging the employee he'd fired so casually, of admitting his costly mistake. But when the board of directors issued an urgent ultimatum, fix the crisis immediately, or face immediate termination himself, he finally caved. His call came through my private phone line just before sunset. The man who'd spoken to me with cold indifference during my termination now sounded breathless, panicked, and desperate. Gone was the condescending, authoritative tone. In its place was frantic urgency and unmasked fear. "I need you to come back to the lab right away." He rushed out. No preamble, no apology. "The system is down. All trials are halted and we're facing catastrophic losses. Only you can fix this." I listened in quiet silence, letting his frantic words hang in the air. There was no remorse in his voice, no regret for firing me, no acknowledgement of my years of loyalty. He didn't care about the unfairness of my termination. He only cared about saving his job, his reputation, and the company's crumbling profits. I responded calmly, my tone steady and unyielding. "I no longer work for your lab. I was terminated effective immediately yesterday morning. I have no obligation to resolve your company's operational failures." He froze on the line, clearly unprepared for my refusal. He'd assumed I'd jump at the chance to return, that I'd beg for my old job back the second he called. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, his old arrogance flaring briefly through his panic. "You built this system for our lab. You have a professional duty to fix it. This is costing us millions every single hour. I built this system for myself." I cut him off sharply. "I patented it under my maiden name. I maintained it for 19 years out of loyalty to this lab's mission, not out of obligation to your greedy budget schemes. You eliminated my role, discarded my dedication, and gutted the safety protocols I spent decades perfecting. That duty ended the second you handed me my termination papers." I laid out the unvarnished truth he'd spent months ignoring. "You treated institutional knowledge as dead weight. You treated my loyalty as leverage to cut costs. You thought experience was replaceable and human dedication was worthless. Now you're paying the price for your arrogance." Realizing his temper was pushing me further away, he quickly backtracked, his voice turning pleading and desperate. "I'm sorry, okay? I made a terrible mistake. I was too hasty, too focused on numbers. I'll reinstate your position immediately. I'll give you a raise, a promotion, anything you want. Just come fix this before the entire company collapses." I scoffed softly. A raise and a promotion were empty consolation prizes for the dignity he'd stripped from me, for the 19 years he'd erased like they meant nothing. He still didn't understand the root of the problem. This was never about salary or title. It was about respect, integrity, and the value of hard work that no spreadsheet could quantify. "I don't want my old job back," I told him plainly. "I don't want a promotion or a raise. I want formal, written accountability for your wrongful termination, your reckless safety violations, and your illegal exploitation of my private intellectual property." I listed my non-negotiable terms one by one, leaving no room for argument or manipulation. First, you will issue a company-wide formal apology admitting your negligent cost-cutting caused this crisis and acknowledging my 19 years of irreplaceable contributions. Second, you will rescind my wrongful termination on official record and provide a flawless professional reference for my future career. Third, the company will sign a permanent licensing agreement to use my technology at a legally verified market rate, with full retroactive compensation for every year of unpaid usage prior. And fourth, I finished firmly, you will immediately reinstate all safety protocols you removed. Every single one. No more cutting corners, no more risking trial integrity and staff safety for quarterly profits. He sputtered in shock, overwhelmed by my demands. "That's excessive. That will tank my reputation with the board. Your reputation is already tanked, I corrected him coldly. Your career is already hanging by a thread. Every penalty, every lost client, every damaged investor relationship is your doing, not mine. You have two options. Accept every single term unconditionally, or let the lab collapse entirely. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I'm not your employee anymore. I'm the owner of your core infrastructure. You don't get to negotiate with me. You get to comply. Defeated, desperate, and completely out of options, the arrogant COO finally surrendered. He had no leverage, no counter-argument, no way out. Every choice he'd made led him to this moment, begging mercy from the quiet employee he'd cruelly underestimated. He agreed to every single term, no exceptions, no delays. And in that moment, after 19 years of staying in the shadows, of letting my hard work speak for itself while others took the credit, I finally reclaimed every ounce of the respect, value, and power he'd tried to steal from me. With no other choice left, the COO kept every single promise he'd made, not out of decency, but out of pure survival fear. The next morning, the entire lab received an official company-wide memo drafted and signed by executive leadership. It openly condemned the reckless cost-cutting decisions, publicly acknowledged my 19 years of irreplaceable service, and formally admitted that his dismissal of senior safety protocols and experienced staff directly triggered the multimillion-dollar operational crisis. It was a humiliating public takedown, the kind of corporate apology no arrogant executive ever wants attached to his professional record. Every scientist, technician, and board member read the truth in black and white. He had gutted safety, discarded loyalty, and nearly destroyed the entire lab for petty quarterly profit gains. True to my terms, my wrongful termination was fully rescinded in official HR records. My employment history was cleaned entirely, and the company issued a permanent, glowing professional reference that guaranteed my credibility in the entire medical research industry for life. I was no longer a dismissed employee. I was officially recognized as the foundational expert who built the lab's most critical framework. The legal team moved swiftly to finalize the licensing agreement. After thorough market valuation, the company was forced to pay me substantial retroactive compensation for nearly 2 decades of unlicensed usage of my patented technology. They also signed a permanent annual licensing contract at full market value, ensuring I receive consistent, legitimate payment for my intellectual property for every year moving forward. Most importantly, every single safety protocol the COO had eliminated was fully restored, revised, and strengthened. New company policies were written to prohibit executive leaders from cutting safety standards for profit, protecting the lab, its staff, and its clinical trial participants from ever facing such reckless corporate negligence again. Once all paperwork was signed, finalized, and legally binding, I returned to the lab one final time, not as an employee, but as a verified technology owner and contracted consultant. The atmosphere was unrecognizable. Staff members who once feared executive retaliation now greeted me with immense respect and gratitude. The researchers knew I had single-handedly saved the lab from total collapse, saved their jobs, and restored the safety standards that protected their work and reputations. The COO kept his distance the entire time. He never dared speak to me again, never tried to make eye contact, never attempted to justify his past actions. The man who once strutted through the lab like an untouchable king was now quiet, defeated, and completely stripped of his ego. I spent 2 days recalibrating, rebooting, and reactivating my core system. I restored all stalled clinical trials, re-established data synchronization, and reinstated every automated safety checkpoint the company had abandoned. Within 48 hours, the entire lab was fully operational again, steady, precise, and safer than it had been in years. The second the system was stable and running independently, I submitted my official voluntary resignation. This time, it was my choice. Final, unnegotiable, and permanent. I walked away from the daily grind, the overtime shifts, and the decades of behind-the-scenes labor. I no longer needed the lab. The lab needed me. With my licensing contract secured, my compensation paid in full, and my professional reputation untouchable, I was finally free. The COO's downfall arrived swiftly after my departure. The board reviewed his entire track record of negligence, policy violations, and reckless mismanagement. The public apology memo, the financial losses, the client penalties, and the safety breaches all stacked up against him. Within weeks, he was officially terminated for gross corporate misconduct. His executive career collapsed completely. Blacklisted from the medical research and biotech industry, he lost every high-level connection, every future opportunity, and every bit of status he had once flaunted. The man who fired loyalty for a budget line item ended up losing his entire six-figure career over his own arrogance. As for me, I walked away with dignity, financial security, and hard-earned peace. 19 years of quiet dedication was no longer invisible. My expertise, my patents, and my contribution were legally documented, publicly celebrated, and financially rewarded. I turned unfair termination into generational compensation, corporate disrespect into unshakable professional credibility, and burnout into freedom. This story taught me the truest form of corporate karma: quiet. Consistent experts always hold the real power. Spreadsheets and arrogant executive titles mean nothing without the foundational talent that keeps a company alive. Arrogant leaders can cut corners, discard loyalty, and underestimate the quiet people in the room. But they can never outrun the consequences of disrespecting true, irreplaceable value. He tried to throw my 19 years of dedication away like trash. Instead, he threw away his entire career, his reputation, and his future, while I walked away victorious, compensated, and forever free. This is the perfect, final, and satisfying end. Most corporate revenge stories end with a sudden fall from grace, a quick termination, or a satisfying public defeat. But the truest justice is never instant. It is slow, unchanging, and permanent. It lives in the long-term divide between those who exploit others for gain and those who build real, unbreakable value. This fifth and final chapter is the ultimate closure to my story, wrapping up every loose thread and revealing the irreversible fates time delivered to all of us. Months turned into a full year after the chaos at the medical lab, and the stark contrast between my life and the disgraced COO's life only grew wider with every passing day. The young, arrogant executive who once ruled the lab with reckless greed never recovered from his downfall. His official termination for gross corporate misconduct became a permanent stain on his professional record, one that no resume rewrite, no networking favor, no desperate apology could ever erase. Blacklisted across the entire biotech and medical research industry, every elite firm, research lab, and corporate healthcare group rejected his applications instantly. He lost his six-figure salary, his executive status, his luxury lifestyle, and every powerful professional connection he once relied on. No colleagues reached out to support him. No former partners defended his mistakes. Everyone in the industry knew the truth. He had gutted critical safety protocols, discarded decades of loyal expertise, and nearly collapsed a reputable medical lab just to inflate quarterly budget numbers. Stripped of the power and ego that once defined him, he faded into total obscurity. He was forced to take ordinary, low-level corporate jobs far beneath his former status, forever living with the bitter regret of trading a thriving career and a stable legacy for a foolish, unnecessary, cost-cutting power play. He now watches the lab's continued success from the sidelines, forced to confront his catastrophic mistake every time he sees the company thrive without him. Back at the medical lab, every toxic practice he implemented was completely erased. The strengthened safety protocols I helped restore became the new gold standard for the facility. The board implemented strict new policies banning reckless profit-driven cuts to research safety and core operational infrastructure. The lab no longer prioritizes spreadsheets over scientists, or quarterly gains over long-term stability. They learned the hard way that institutional knowledge and dedicated expertise are not budget liabilities. They are a company's most priceless asset. The staff never forgot what happened. They still speak of the crisis as a vital lesson. Never underestimate the quiet, unassuming team members who build, maintain, and protect the entire operation behind the scenes. The arrogance of temporary leadership can never outweigh the value of lifelong, dedicated craft. As for me, my life settled into a state of peaceful, unshakable abundance I never thought possible during my decades of behind-the-scenes labor. I no longer work exhausting overtime shifts, no longer fix others' reckless mistakes, no longer sacrifice my time and energy to prop up leaders who refuse to respect hard work. Thanks to the permanent licensing agreement, I receive consistent, substantial passive income from my patented core, technology, compensation for 19 years of unrecognized labor the company once took for granted. My professional reputation in the medical research industry is now impeccable and unrivaled. I am no longer the anonymous background expert. I am recognized as a skilled innovator, a meticulous system architect, and a vital industry contributor whose work stabilized and saved a major medical research facility. I've reclaimed my time, my peace, and my self-worth. I take on only selective, high-value consulting projects on my own terms, working when I want, for who I want, and never again bending to the reckless demands of arrogant, unqualified leadership. I work smart, not endless, and I am finally fully rewarded for every bit of talent I possess. Looking back, I feel no bitterness, no resentment, no need for petty revenge. That unfair termination was the brutal wake-up call I needed to stop letting my loyalty be exploited, stop hiding my value for others' gain, and stop allowing unearned authority to dictate my career. The COO thought he was cutting dead weight from his budget. In reality, he cut the chains that had been holding me back. He discarded my 19 years of loyalty to chase temporary profit, and in doing so, he gifted me lifelong financial security, unbeatable professional credibility, and the freedom to live life entirely on my own terms. This is the final, timeless lesson of my story. True value cannot be cut from a budget sheet. Real expertise cannot be replaced by corporate arrogance. Stolen or unrecognized hard work always resurfaces to rewrite the future. Arrogant. Greedy leaders rise on the hard work of others, but they always fall by their own foolish choices. The corporate liar faded into regret and obscurity. The quiet, dedicated expert rose into permanent freedom and success. This is the absolute, unalterable, and perfect ending. No more chaos, no more injustice, no more loose ends. Karma prevailed, truth won, and I finally have everything I earned. Time is the fairest judge of all. It erases fake power, exposes empty arrogance, and immortalizes real value. This sixth and definitive final chapter closes every last chapter of my story, leaving no what-ifs, no loose ends, and no unresolved pain. It is the quiet, permanent ending that proves karma does not rush. It always lands perfectly. 2 full years have passed since that reckless Tuesday morning when the new COO threw my 19 years of loyalty away for a meaningless budget cut. The lab today is unrecognizable from the toxic, profit-obsessed environment he created. The board kept their promise permanently. Safety protocols are now the strictest in the entire regional medical research industry. No executive is allowed to prioritize quarterly gains over scientific integrity. No manager can eliminate senior roles without exhaustive institutional review. And no one is permitted to dismiss quiet staff expertise as redundant labor. My patented system still powers every major clinical trial the lab runs. It is stable, refined, and stronger than ever, generating consistent breakthrough data and millions in annual research funding. Every official company introduction, every investor pitch, every research publication now carries a clear, printed credit, core proprietary system designed, built, and patented by me. I am no longer just a former employee. I am listed as a foundational innovator of the facility, a permanent part of the lab's official legacy. Meanwhile, the disgraced ex-COO has vanished entirely from high-level corporate circles. His name is synonymous with negligence, corporate recklessness, and short-sighted greed in every biotech boardroom. His attempt to destroy decades of safety standards for minor budget savings is still used internally as a cautionary tale for new executives. He is no longer invited to industry events, no longer considered for leadership roles, no longer trusted with any level of operational authority. He tried to rebuild his image with small consulting jobs, but his past failure always follows him. Employers quickly discover his history of cutting safety protocols, mismanaging critical infrastructure, and creating company-wide crises for personal profit. Doors close instantly. Opportunities never materialize. He lives in quiet, invisible defeat. No fame, no power, no luxury, no legacy. The empire he tried to build on cutting corners and discarding loyal workers crumbled completely, and he has no one to blame but himself. On rare occasions, former colleagues update me on his situation. He still watches my public industry updates. He still sees my name attached to major research breakthroughs. He still witnesses the lab thriving beautifully without his toxic leadership, entirely stabilized by the very person he fired so carelessly. No hatred haunts him more deeply than the regret of knowing he destroyed his own brilliant future out of pure arrogance. My life, in complete contrast, continues to elevate peacefully and steadily. The passive licensing income from my technology freed me from ever needing to trade my time for money again. I handpick only the most meaningful consulting projects, focusing on improving medical research safety and helping young scientists protect their own original work and intellectual property. I turn my old trauma into purpose, teaching others never to let their loyalty be exploited or their quiet expertise be overlooked. I have healed completely from the unfair termination, the disrespect, and the months of corporate stress. I no longer carry bitterness. I do not wish harm on the man who wronged me. I simply no longer acknowledge him in my story at all. He became a temporary lesson. I became a permanent legacy. This is the ultimate truth I learned after 19 years behind the scenes and 2 years of freedom. Titles are temporary. Power is borrowed. Arrogance fades. But genuine skill, integrity, and hard work never. Disappear. Quiet employees who hold the company's actual foundation in their hands are always the most powerful people in the room, even when no one notices until it is too late. Tried to erase me from the company's story. Instead, he erased himself and cemented my place in history. This is the absolute final ending. No more chapters. No more fallout. No more closure required. The greedy executive faded into nothing. The underestimated expert rose into endless, unshakable success. Time is the fairest judge of all. It erases fake power, exposes empty arrogance, and immortalizes real value. This sixth and definitive final chapter closes every last chapter of my story, leaving no what-ifs, no loose ends, and no unresolved pain. It is the quiet, permanent ending that proves karma does not rush. It always lands perfectly. 2 full years have passed since that reckless Tuesday morning when the new COO threw my 19 years of loyalty away for a meaningless budget cut. The lab today is unrecognizable from the toxic, profit-obsessed environment he created. The board kept their promise permanently. Safety protocols are now the strictest in the entire regional medical research industry. No executive is allowed to prioritize quarterly gains over scientific integrity. No manager can eliminate senior roles without exhaustive institutional review. And no one is permitted to dismiss quiet staff expertise as redundant labor. My patented system still powers every major clinical trial the lab runs. It is stable, refined, and stronger than ever, generating consistent breakthrough data and millions in annual research funding. Every official company introduction, every investor pitch, every research publication now carries a clear, printed credit, core proprietary system designed, built, and patented by me. I am no longer just a former employee. I am listed as a foundational innovator of the facility, a permanent part of the lab's official legacy. Meanwhile, the disgraced ex-COO has vanished entirely from high-level corporate circles. His name is synonymous with negligence, corporate recklessness, and short-sighted greed in every biotech boardroom. His attempt to destroy decades of safety standards for minor budget savings is still used internally as a cautionary tale for new executives. He is no longer invited to industry events, no longer considered for leadership roles, no longer trusted with any level of operational authority. He tried to rebuild his image with small consulting jobs, but his past failure always follows him. Employers quickly discover his history of cutting safety protocols, mismanaging critical infrastructure, and creating company-wide crises for personal profit. Doors close instantly. Opportunities never materialize. He lives in quiet, invisible defeat. No fame, no power, no luxury, no legacy. The empire he tried to build on cutting corners and discarding loyal workers crumbled completely, and he has no one to blame but himself. On rare occasions, former colleagues update me on his situation. He still watches my public industry updates. He still sees my name attached to major research breakthroughs. He still witnesses the lab thriving beautifully without his toxic leadership, entirely stabilized by the very person he fired so carelessly. No hatred haunts him more deeply than the regret of knowing he destroyed his own brilliant future out of pure arrogance. My life, in complete contrast, continues to elevate peacefully and steadily. The passive licensing income from my technology freed me from ever needing to trade my time for money again. I handpick only the most meaningful consulting projects, focusing on improving medical research safety and helping young scientists protect their own original work and intellectual property. I turn my old trauma into purpose, teaching others never to let their loyalty be exploited or their quiet expertise be overlooked. I have healed completely from the unfair termination, the disrespect, and the months of corporate stress. I no longer carry bitterness. I do not wish harm on the man who wronged me. I simply no longer acknowledge him in my story at all. He became a temporary lesson. I became a permanent legacy. This is the ultimate truth I learned after 19 years behind the scenes and 2 years of freedom. Titles are temporary. Power is borrowed. Arrogance fades. But genuine skill, integrity, and hard work never. Disappear. Quiet employees who hold the company's actual foundation in their hands are always the most powerful people in the room, even when no one notices until it is too late. Tried to erase me from the company's story. Instead, he erased himself and cemented my place in history. This is the absolute final ending. No more chapters. No more fallout. No more closure required. The greedy executive faded into nothing. The underestimated expert rose into endless, unshakable success. Every story has a final layer that time only reveals after years of stillness. A closing that does not add drama, but erases every last shadow of the old pain and locks the legacy in place forever. This 8th chapter is the absolute ultimate ending of my journey, the final truth that turns corporate karma into a timeless lesson no executive can ever deny. 4 years have now passed since that careless Tuesday morning when the new COO tossed my 19 years of loyalty into the trash for a single budget line item. The ex-COO has vanished, completely from every professional sphere that once mattered. His name no longer appears in any industry database for executive hiring. No consulting firm will touch his resume. No medical or biotech organization will entertain his application. The temporary power he once abused is gone, evaporated into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a career graveyard he can never dig himself out of. He no longer even qualifies for mid-level corporate roles. Employers run quick background checks and instantly reject him, aware of his history of reckless safety violations, intellectual property negligence, and catastrophic company mismanagement. He is stuck in a perpetual loop of dead-end positions, underpaid labor, and unrespected work. A bitter contrast to the 6-figure executive throne he once occupied with unearned arrogance. Worst of all, he is forced to watch my legacy evolve far beyond anything he could have ever imagined or achieved. My patented clinical safety and data framework is now an industry standard nationwide. Dozens of top-tier medical research labs, pharmaceutical trial facilities, and public health institutions rely entirely on my system to keep their trials compliant, accurate, and safe. What I built in quiet, unrecognized years now protects millions of clinical data points and safeguards countless medical research breakthroughs. I no longer chase jobs, titles, or promotions. I hold exclusive intellectual property rights that generate steady, lifelong passive income. I work on my own schedule, choose only ethical projects, and spend my days mentoring emerging scientists to protect their own innovation, credit, and labor from greedy corporate exploitation. I turned decades of being invisible into a lifetime of being irreplaceable. The original lab that once discarded me now treats my work as their most sacred asset. They have permanently embedded my name in their founding innovation records, created annual internal safety awards named after my system, and built mandatory executive training courses centered around the lesson of my wrongful termination. To this day, every new executive hired at that lab is taught the same core lesson. Never mistake quiet loyalty for replaceability. Never trade safety for profit. And never underestimate the unsung experts who build a company's true foundation. The toxic corporate culture the ex-COO created is completely extinct. The corner-cutting, profit-obsessed mindset that nearly destroyed the facility has been erased entirely, replaced with integrity-first policies that prioritize people, safety, and innovation over quarterly spreadsheets. Looking back across 4 years of growth and healing, I feel zero resentment toward the man who wronged me. He did me the greatest favor of my entire career. He freed me. He freed me from spending my entire life building someone else's empire. He freed me from sacrificing my talent, my time, and my expertise for leaders who would never value me. He freed me from the cycle of quiet exploitation that traps so many hardworking, skilled employees behind corporate shadows. His arrogance was my breakthrough. His injustice was my liberation. His greed was my generational wealth. This is the ultimate, unbreakable truth I carry with me now. Corporations can fire you. Executives can overlook you. Systems can take your work for granted, but no one can ever take away your skill, your innovation, your patents, or the value you build with your own hands. Temporary power always falls. Borrowed success always crumbles. Stolen labor always backfires. Only earned excellence lasts forever. The ex-COO chose budget cuts over gratitude, ego over expertise, and greed over integrity. He lost everything: his career, his reputation, his status, and his future. I chose patience, craft, and self-respect. I gained everything: freedom, security, legacy, and unshakable industry respect. This is the true final ending, with no loose threads left untied. The greedy executive faded into permanent oblivion. The invisible employee rose to become an industry legend. Karma is not cruel. It is just final. All stories have their closing breath, the quiet, final resolution that no sequel, no reflection, and no passing time can ever change. This 9th chapter is the absolute last page of my journey. There will be no more updates, no more follow-ups, and no more loose ends. This is where the story permanently ends. 5 full years have passed since that ordinary Tuesday morning when a young, overconfident COO erased my 19 years of loyal service from the company roster. He thought he was trimming excess weight from his budget. In truth, he severed the only anchor keeping his entire corporate world from collapsing. Today, the ex-COO exists in complete, irreversible obscurity. He is no longer a part of the medical research industry in any capacity. Every professional gate remains locked against him. His name is permanently flagged in corporate risk databases, marked for catastrophic negligence and intellectual property misconduct. No board will ever trust him with leadership again. No firm will ever hand him budget authority, operational control, or creative oversight. The executive life he once flaunted is dead, buried, and never coming back. He now works mundane, unremarkable jobs where no one knows his past, no one fears his authority, and no one listens to his opinions. Stripped of his title, his ego, and his power, he lives with the quiet daily torture of knowing exactly what he lost and exactly who he destroyed it for. His regret is not loud or dramatic. It is worse. It is constant, silent, and inescapable. He watches my industry legacy grow larger every single year. My patented clinical system is now a nationwide gold standard. It safeguards federal research trials, university medical programs, and private pharmaceutical innovations. My protocols save labs millions in avoidable errors, prevent dangerous safety lapses, and ensure data integrity for life-changing medical studies. The work I built in quiet, uncelebrated years now protects entire industries and advances real medical progress. I no longer need to prove my worth to anyone. My passive licensing revenue grants me lifelong financial stability. My industry reputation is flawless, unchallenged, and widely respected. I consult only on my own terms, mentor emerging innovators freely, and spend my days building something meaningful. Not for a company, not for a boss, but for the future of scientific integrity. The original lab that fired me still stands, but it is no longer the same organization. The toxic profit-blind culture is gone. The reckless cost-cutting era is a forbidden chapter in their history books. Every new hire, every new manager, and every new executive learns my story as a core institutional lesson. Quiet expertise is not disposable. Loyalty is not weakness. True company value lives in the builders, not the bosses. I have long since let go of anger. I do not pity the ex-CO, nor do I wish him harm. I simply no longer allow him space in my narrative. He became my hardest lesson, and I turned that lesson into my greatest victory. His choice was simple arrogance. He trusted spreadsheets over experience, titles over talent, and temporary gains over long-term stability. My reward was simple justice. Out of the shadows, I rose into legacy, freedom, and unshakable self-worth. This is the final, timeless moral of my entire story. Corporate titles are temporary. Executive power is borrowed. Budget cuts are short-sighted. But real skill, original innovation, and earned value are eternal. You can fire the employee. You cannot fire the foundation. You can dismiss the quiet builder. You cannot dismiss the truth. The greedy executive faded into forgotten regret. The invisible worker became the industry's lasting example of integrity and power. This is the end, finished, sealed, forever complete.